Black Conversations Season 4 is proudly brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. The opinions expressed within this series are solely of the individuals and do not reflect the opinions and beliefs of the Castle Milk Stout brand. Please be advised, the following program contains views which may be triggering for sensitive viewers.
I'm better known as DJ Sbu in the entertainment circles in South Africa. I'm an entrepreneur and I'm also a media broadcaster.
Kama ayaleu amlak heru sekem ankamun usilo samanzi uzinyo lengwenya ngikhuliswa ke untombi yasemabheleni ulanga lokulunga ukhubone. I'm a farmer by profession and I'm a spiritual teacher and I'm a healer.
I am a poet, I'm a published author. I've worked in television, media for 2 decades. I'm a playwright, I work in theater, I've acted in film and theater. Mara, there in the streets, Bantibakile Madira Station.
I'm a cultural historian and professionally I'm a mental health practitioner.
My name is Stogie T, I'm a rapper.
The secret of every culture is in the language. So if you lose the language, you lose the essence of what the culture is. Language is the key to unlocking the meaning of life and the meaning of our existence. Without language, we don't have a tradition, we don't have a culture.
My thought is we're not doing enough. We should be doing more. We know what we should be doing, especially us who are parents, Konamanje, and who understand our history, where this country comes from, and the responsibilities that we have as parents of our little ones. Yes, some of us do try to get those extra classes on weekends to speak those vernacular languages endlini. I think we're not doing enough as a country.
African languages are one of our greatest treasures. A language holds so much. A language holds the philosophy of a people, a worldview. A language, the words, the vocabulary tells you what matters to that people, to those people. And the connection that people feel when you embrace their language, when you embrace them in their language, it's like getting a hug. It's like, somebody connecting, plugging you in right into their source at home. You could never get that kind of connection with English.
The language as such is a doorway to your spirituality, to your human existence, to your mental health, to your comprehension of the world and self-understanding. So when you preserve your language, you preserve your consciousness.
Language is it's the first line of defense for any culture. I think for me, more than preserving it is formalizing it so that it holds the scientific and scholarly traditions, making sure that, you can study high school, you can go to university with this, with our indigenous languages. To me, it's probably more paramount as an African.
I think that the preservation of African languages within an African context is integral and important as a way of knowing where we come from, to better navigate where we are going and how we're going to be moving in present and in future life.
And I think the preservation of Black languages is imperative. This is who we are, it's our culture. And you also know, the first point of colonization is language. And to preserve language is to preserve culture. And to preserve culture is to preserve our way of being. But the point I'm trying to make is that we need to write. We need to start writing. We need to have in all different languages across Africa, all the Black languages, we need to have our dictionaries. We need to have our books of idioms, our stories, our novels in our own languages so that we preserve it.
Language speaks to your roots as a person and where you're from. Language is geographical. So, in my opinion, if you lose that, you tend to lose where you come from. And if you don't know where you're from, then I cannot say confidently because you know where you're going as a person.
Statistics say one indigenous language is lost every 2 weeks.
Sure.
I mean, what I want to ask is, what is an indigenous language and how do we preserve these languages, Oslim?
Yeah, that is a hectic statistic. I've never heard of that before, but it actually makes sense. I mean, at some point, they used to say that the sun never sets on the British Empire, right? And probably the last strongest vestige of the British Empire is language. Indigenous language, I think, is language that is forged in the mouths, in the minds, in the hearts, in the spirits of the people. So that can be contentious because you have indigenous languages that go back centuries, millennia, you know, in our corner of the world. But then I would say, and other people would say as well, that Afrikaans is an indigenous language because it was forged in the mouths of slaves. It was made first in the mouths of black and brown people. It was first written by enslaved people. So, yeah, who belongs to the language? Who does the language belong to?
The language owns people because it's a spiritual dissemination to their consciousness. The doorway to your consciousness is your language. Because other than you defining your language, it defines you. It answers questions within and inside of you that you need to express. Therefore, you need the right semantics, the correct grammar that comes with the guile and the dignity to express it. And ultimately, psycholinguistically, you need the emotional vocabulary so that you can be understood in the context of communication. So I would say, therefore, the language owns you.
When you speak of Afrikaans, to me, it's really fascinating because it feels like it's the most successful kind of decolonizing initiative.
Stay tuned for more moments to savor. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. Our languages, our stories. Don't let them fade. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
You know, when you speak of Afrikaans, to me, it's really fascinating because it feels like it's the most successful kind of decolonizing initiative.
Break it down.
Because, as you said, this is a language formed on the soil.
But by Hutuite, right? Mahua by Hutuite.
Yes,
so
yes.
that they could build their own nationalist agenda
Exactly.
that wasn't for our benefit.
Hold on.
Okay.
But here's, I say absolutely. That was the goal, right? For them. But for me, it's an example of how to formalize our own languages, because it was a national project. It wasn't like us, you're gonna ask me, do you speak? Does your family speak? It wasn't a personal thing. It was a national initiative, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's the one thing we should have borrowed from them. Is to say, okay, tax. Law in Zulu. We're doing, and so that's why I say this Creole that they made here was formalized. Because again, they're fighting a colonizer.
Yes.
Yeah, so.
It came from the Malay Indians in Cape Town. Predominantly, in fact, 67% of Africans came from them. Then Afrikaners, they picked up dialects, African dialects out there, in order to form what today they recognize as a national language, which, interesting enough, polished up their identity. They now had a language they could speak. They had a language that they could entrench so that they could control business and the people that are going to work for them, which is us this time.
Can I jump in, Rangani? What is indigenous language? What is language? Asuseni, the humanity of it first, the external humanity. Let's put Africans aside, Europeans aside, Chinese aside. Let's put color of skin aside. And let's get to the essence of what humans are. Spirit. What language does spirit speak?
Oof.
It's a brilliant question because Koko Credo Muto teaches us that Dala bekunganayo yona language inkulumo.
Nakho.
They used to communicate telepathically.
If we can go back to that essence, sizobona ukuthi at some point, someone is trying to put you on this side of the fence and put me on this side of the fence. And now we stop speaking essentials and we start speaking non-existent practicals.
I was like, I'm in trouble. I'm seeing beads. I'm seeing, and you know, to be real, I did check out Bob on online, and I was like, I checked out a couple videos, and I was like, okay, it's gonna be real. It's about to be real.
The Queen of England is German.
Yes.
She speaks English.
Yes.
And it's the Queen's English.
Yes.
So English is not the Queen of England's language. isiZulu as a culture is less than, 18, 17, 200 and something years old today. So isiZulu as a language in existence is, 200 years old. isiXhosa as a language can be traced maybe before that. But what did uXhosa speak? Did he speak isiXhosa?
No.
Now, if we're going to talk about what is indigenous language is my spirit trying to reach out to you in communication. That's it. There's always been an exchange of languages. There's always been an exchange of cultures. As long as we Africans are going to sit here and see ourselves as these special melanated people who came in a spaceship and we are special from God, we are always going to find points and conflicts even amongst each other, because we forget the essential humanity of who we are, and then we want to focus on good. No, but the original Sesotho says there was no original Sesotho. There was no original Sixhosa. Tsotsitaal, in 100 years' time, will be a canonized language, yasekasi. And for us to say that, no, we cannot canonize it, Tsotsitaal, we are depriving a whole generation of articulation, of creativity, of intelligence, of philosophy. Because ekasi sinokuthi bloma kancane uzikhuphule awuthiyama. In that statement, I've given you a whole philosophical treatise on how to elevate your consciousness. Sit down, relax, meditate. Uzikhuphule and elevate your consciousness. But it's tsotsitaal iskasi. Now, if we're going to say, no, but that's not a language. No, nobody has a language in this world. We are all trying to articulate the deep meaning of what we feel inside. To focus on a spoken language, which over, let's take a 100-year period. In the past 100 years, Sepedi has changed so much. Xhosa has changed so much. What aspect of it are we preserving? Are we preserving the last memory we heard of it, of how it was spoken? Or are we preserving how our grandfathers spoke it?
Yeah, what you're saying is profound. That means that the drum is an older language than
the spoken word. A hug.
love.
A pat on the shoulder.
Pat on the shoulder.
Sign language.
Shaking of the hand. Behavior. That's the language we should be speaking about.
When hip hop came in, I relaxed. Yes, I relaxed, and then I said to myself, wise men, find a consciousness of this youth. There's a message they're trying to pass on to you. They were transferring the language of pain that no average man, even psychiatrists and psychologists, could not actually assimilate. They gave us a principle that I can express myself in my own pain without reversing it inside of me. Then what hip-hop did, it became an epitome of freedom, so that you can express the way they want to express. They cut off so-called etiquette and manners and express what they feel at the time. And young men like Tupac led the fray. They took the trauma of the society and converted it into rhythm. So hip-hop changed the trajectory of the language again, but it was language well-spoken.
Ukhuluma hip-hop, imibongo, kidireto,
Yes.
ukhahlela. I'm sure you would know this. in a cipher. It's either you're gonna praise, you're gonna give props, big up
Yeah.
to lo muntu or uzomdisa.
Oh, I big up
right?
myself.
Or
Yeah.
you understand? There's that
affirm
exchange.
yourself.
You affirm yourself while
Or combat. Be combative. Yeah.
So now, in that, usenza ngakhona, umzukwana kandaba, isala kutshelwa, isala kunyenyezelwa, ingathe yasinda abazingeli sebeyozele. You understand?
Stay tuned for more moments to savor. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. Our languages, our stories. Don't let them fade. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
What happened was, when we speak about language, you have to break it down to all these aspects of the human consciousness. Since a human being is 9 beings in himself, 9 spheres of consciousness within one, there's 9 languages that each of us speak. There's a language we speak that does not have words. There's a language we speak in our aura. If someone walks into the room and they are angry at the whole world, we could have been the happiest people for that moment. His aura or her aura is going to disturb us because her aura spoke in a language that our auras could understand, but our words can't explain what's happening. These 9 dimensions of you have 9 different languages. Depending on where you are, hip-hop, Abu Tupac and their environment force them to express themselves in a certain way. Whereas me na emaxhoseni, the beach, the mountains, the trees, the cows forced me to express myself in a certain way. That's why if the dopest rapper anywhere could come, I could stand pamgwake toe to toe. And I wouldn't even try to do hip hop. This was bongela. Usilo samanzi, uzinyona lengwenya, uboya bengwe, into esuke ezantsi emalwandle, into yangena phansi kwentaba yakhuphuka iphethe induku yashiya amadoda balala phansi. Try and tell me that in hip hop. Do you understand that? So, but that is hip hop. That is language. That is spoken word.
I need the both of you to record voice notes for me every time people attack me about what I do because I call it hip hop and they come and no, because you see, I always, it's funny, sometimes I'm in panels and discussions and people always say this like, yo, hip hop is the voice of the youth and it's like, oh, beautiful, this is amazing. That's what I'm trying to do. And then because I'm rapping in English, or others are rapping in English, or others are emulating even. People are emulating these amazing things. I mean, what you described is mesmeric, is enchanting.
Mesmeric.
And why wouldn't you want to draw from that? Especially if it looks like you, it sounds familiar. What you just did now sounds familiar. It sounds like Reza. You know what I mean? So why wouldn't I want to draw from that? No, you are trying to be American. Hi, bo.
If we are going to focus on, is it English, is it Xhosa, is it Zulu, is it Tswana, we are going to lose the essence of what we are trying to say to each other. Because now I'm going to shut my ears because now you are speaking English, but I'm going to favor her because ukhuluma Tswana. And ukhuluma umphetho wodwa nangumuntu. Nangu umuntu okhuluma into ekhulisayo, but they can only articulate it in English.
Yes.
Now, we have to ask ourselves the question, is language what we hear, or is it the meaning behind what we hear?
I don't rap about anything else but African stories. That's all I rap about. But I think maybe the presentation of it, there might be a barrier there where people don't quite, it's not as obvious that that's what I'm doing.
When you read it in English, you want to be understood, simple as that. You want to reach out to the man who might not comprehend isiTsonga, isiZulu.
Yes, sir.
Because Abangoni languages, if you take Abangoni languages, not Nguni, Abangoni, those that do not sin, which...
Why do you
So
make
what
the
is the please make
distinction?
Exactly.
Abangoni, I take the entire Africa.
Ngoni.
Abangoni. That's how we saw ourselves
Thina
spiritually.
singabangoni.
Yeah, those that do
Ubona
not
is sin, is to sin.
is to sin.
Abangoni is those that do not sin.
Those are black people. We never saw ourselves as caricatures of sinfulness because our life was carried by spirituality, that we saw ourselves as God in human forms. Here is the deal. To be understood was not something that we strive to. We gave what we had inside, and we allowed another man to make an interpretation of what we possess. So in every Ngoni word, you'll find a secret.
Yes.
Yeah, there are so many words
Yes.
in Zulu. It will take you time before you understand. I've been asking people a simple question. Umphefumulo. Umphefumulo. What does it mean? And in all areas of KZN where I teach the spiritual aspect of the language, I discovered a disappointment that nobody could tell me what umphefumulo is. You know, because people don't understand the depth of themselves. So in other words, if you then take other language and other words in the Ngoni languages, they will be spoken in 3 words, yet it's a full page of an information that defines a certain thing in a language.
In one word.
In one word, yes.
So umphefumulo, when you deconstruct it, what does it mean?
What is imulo?
Mulo.
Milky stars. Isn't it? Are you not a byproduct of a star's material?
Yeah, stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Breath.
Yeah. So you're breathing what is in your environment.
Wow. I think I'm going to treat my whole self differently after this conversation. There were some really explosive ideas that were put forward. You know, apartheid did so much to put us inside these like very rigid boxes. And what was said today is that like, we don't even exist in the box of a body. Never mind the box of this identity that you're telling yourself that you are.
But then one goes back a couple of decades back to how you were born and the type of parents you were born into and the languages that they spoke vis-a-vis to the languages that you speak today and the profession that you're in, that you've been able to make a living out of language.
Lebo and I have a very similar, I suppose, formation. We were displaced, you know? And I think when you're displaced, the one thing that's always in the top of mind is place. It's like, where do I belong, you know? And language to me is completely utilitarian. Like it's just a utility.
It's a tool.
It's a tool. You know, when you were talking about a kind of universality of humanity, you know, it kind of like I identify with that a lot, you know. So like a writer that I really fell in love with very early in my journey was Dambudzo Marachera. He's a Zimbabwean writer. His relationship with English was to bastardize it, to like enslave it and to deform it and to make it, you know, and that really sounds like what rappers do. That's what Ebonics is. You know, for me, I loved that. It even started to do this because you can imagine, kamuki politiki, you know, mamzo, you know, but kayi, it's like this hip hop, this dirty language, this, you know, and you know where they meet? They meet at this point where you're talking about Tupac and them. It meets at this, you know, rebellion, like self-affirmation, and then literally creating yourself anew. I always tell, you know, even people in the hip hop space that I have a chip on my shoulder when anyone says that kid is not African enough. He's not African because he's got the baggy pants and he looks like Young Thug, you know? Because I ask you respectfully, can this adopted sound negate all that history, all that ancestry, all those stories that live in him, in his soul? This African child, can all that remove that? Can me wanting to sound like wanting the cadence, yeah, Kendrick Lamar, remove the fact that I hold my grandmother's stories?
Is that still your question? Are you still on that search even now?
No, not for me, not for me. But I see it.
But it's a stigma out there.
Yes, it's a stigma. And even this question, you know, preserving language. Like, is there any language in Southern Africa that's endangered except for the sun?
Stick around. The conversation gets richer with every sip. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. Let's get back to preserving languages on Black Conversations, brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
Is there any language in Southern Africa that's endangered except for the San?
There isn't.
I mean, we've got languages that are in the minority that are not. I mean, we're seeing our first drama in Silobedu on TV
Okay, so
now.
you're talking about
Honala
representation.
Mapata that we don't see. Mapulana, my own ancestors, we don't see. These are cultures that they were in the main, but now in the national narrative, national narrative, these have been erased. So my point is just we don't know even the fullness of ourselves, like who we define ourselves as is just a pinpoint in time, but it's not the full arc.
Here's the thing. Today we know isiZulu, right? Inkomo ibhonga esibayeni, right? 2 generations ago, abanye babo basaphila amakhehla, who he would refer to as omkhulu or obabomdala. Basaphila, some of them, who would say, Iyomo, Iyoba, Esbayeni. And that's their language. They don't say Nko. They say Iyo. Now, is it losing language in a national context, or do we start losing language in the homes first? Because we don't speak like our parents spoke, and they don't speak like their parents spoke. So, in a way, language. Okay, first question, is language rigid?
No.
It's not.
No.
Therefore, we cannot say any indigenous language is being lost. Language evolves as we evolve.
So do we get concerned about the preservation of the language, or do we embrace the evolution of it?
So
Ziti the combos are communicating. Ziti
Dilulu is the Solulu. That's an actual philosophy.
Brilliant.
That's a philosophy.
Lulu's the Solulu.
It is a philosophy, and people live by it.
It's a teaching.
It is.
Yes.
Uyabona ukuthi umuntu man every weekend uyodakwa.
Yeah.
Ale dilulu le. Because every Monday he's crying about the same hangover.
Yeah.
Delusion for him is the solution. It's an actual. So are we going to shut that down? No, they're actually showing us how many of our parents were deluded in their lives.
Okay.
How many of us are still deluded?
That's facts.
And we are treating that as a solution. Now, if we're going to shut that philosophy out, we're not going to learn anything.
So,
Okay.
could it be said that there is a level of PTSD and paranoia on our part
Too much.
to be discussing the preservation of
Of something that it's like human rights.
Latin never died, it evolved. It didn't die.
Can you get a job in this country without English, a decent job without English, a job that's going to allow you to drive a car, have a home, put your kids in decent
Yes, you
schools without English at all?
Without a single word of English coming out of your
Okay,
mouth.
then if that's the case, then
We
I
are
have faith in
losing
where we
inkomo.
are.
Siyazilusa inkomo azazi isilungu.
That's true.
Siyalima emasimini. Ikhabisha lidinga isilungu.
That's true.
Imbuzi nezimvu.
Yeah, Big Zulu ain't never spoken a word of English to me.
But at some point, you're gonna have to sell those cabbages. You're gonna have to sell those cows. He's gonna have to get a record deal. Somebody's gonna have to read that contract
to
in
sell
English.
that cow,
Somebody's gonna
I
have to
tell
book
you,
him for
Mlomo.
gigs.
Amakhulungwane. Mbheka. How much is ngeti? Mlungu. You want cow? My inkomo. You want? La pants.
Fine. Now you want to supply Pick and Pay.
Angfun Pick and Pay. Here's the thing. We have this notion of success for us black people is dressed in white clothes. Why? Because we want to succeed in a foreign playground. And we are using the wrong words. Like now, we are debating preserving indigenous language instead of preserving indigenous intelligence.
What you are saying in simple language is the ability to demonstrate and practice the language that you know. Tina, we speak the language that you don't understand. By the way, our own indigenous language, and we don't even care about the meaning of the words. That is why there is misunderstanding when people are talking and arguing, because they don't understand what they're saying to each other. You need to preserve this, the intelligence of the language itself. Ungabi preoccupied with the language itself. How many people, for instance, know the real name Gashaka Gasenza? That was not his real name. Ngoba ichaga isifo. Esingazwo umuntu. His name was Umlilwana, and that name was hardly used. Umlilwana. That is Umlilo Mncane. And ilembe isizenze sharp kunezinye izenze. Which awu ilembe. So ukthefuya thatha umqab ayikajama. Umngabani kajama. Amakhehla ayifaka uthwefu. Umngaba yena yomla phambi kwamadoda ekulumeya. So umngaba ayikho lithi umngaba ezulwini. Umngabani kajama. Then you're going to get this thing of the Africanization of our languages, e.g. Ijongos, which is young OC. Njengamanje nina ngena na shata nisibiza ngotikel. Omakoti, which is mark on steer. The idea that yeah.
Mark on steer.
That's why your marriages are messed up like this, because maybe it's the intelligence. If you emphasize about the intelligence in the language.
I will not be calling my wife that. I will not be calling my wife Makoti anymore. Yeah, it's crazy, wild.
If you are, I don't like the word preserve. If you are going to allow a proper evolution of the language, so that the masses within the language can benefit, ensure that those language dictions and meanings that have been lost, digitalize them.
The concepts.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Philosophical
Abafana
concepts.
bayibiza ngamajongo eThekwini. Kuthiwa ijongo. Yini ijongo? It's a bull. A bull. Uyibiza ngenkabi.
I didn't even know what the cabin
When a man begins to call himself a castrated bull.
I got taught by Big Zulu.
Yeah, if you are going to call yourself a castrated bull, I have a bit of a problem because it then interferes with the profoundness of your consciousness and how your soul or your consciousness responds to the name.
And the historical significance of why amadoda ibizwa inkabi.
Yes, because there is something important.
There's a reason why.
There's a reason why.
Today, that reason is not there
it's
anymore.
Not there. So then what do? You then follow the intelligence and the meaning.
The conversations continue after the break. Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness. Let's get back to preserving languages on Black Conversations, brought to you by Castle Milk Stout. Savor your richness.
As a parent right now, with your understanding of language, what do you teach your kids about language, knowing what you know now? And I'm going to come to you, Sislebo, as well.
My children do not speak any African language, right? And it's not for lack of trying. There's push and pull there, and
We're still working on it, right?
Yeah.
It's a battle we all have.
Right.
All of us.
It's a contemporary battle.
You lost it?
No, we all lost it.
I lost it, but then you don't want to fight. Never argue with your wife and your teenage daughter. Never.
So we finish that point?
You won't win the battle,
Yeah, so I think if everyone can relate to this, and I'm sure people, at home can relate to some of this, I think it's interesting where we're heading. I think it's interesting where we're heading. The most powerful moment for me is when I revealed that I'm struggling with, my kids don't speak, any indigenous language. And he said he's losing that battle. And I was like, what, you? How you? God? All right, okay. So, okay, something to grieve over together.
People have been pointing to this, though. I mean, I remember reading, the late great Keorapetso Khositsile essays that he wrote in the 90s, saying, unless we make a concerted effort, unless he was speaking about the new government that was still going to come into power, unless we make a concerted effort to make languages a vital part of the education system, not just, an African language there, because it's nice to have it, but to integrate it meaningfully, conceptually, into mathematics, into the way we do drama, into the way we do science, into the way we understand biology, astronomy, all of it. Unless we do that, we're gonna lose them. He also said he was somebody who wrote in English, for decades and decades. So he says that time, like in the 50s, 60s, when the Heinemann African Writers series came out, the iconic, African Writers series, they said to him, oh, you know, your work is really beautiful, but it's not African enough, right? And at that time, he was very pissed off about it. He spoke to Chinua Achebe about it, and they had this debate. And it was a debate that lasted for a long time, you know, where he said, you know, you can't, and he used to say this often, you cannot unscramble the colonial egg. Once you've made an omelette, it can't go back to being tamati onion, you know. So we are where we are. He's like, given that, I'm gonna make this English speak my language. This English is going to speak my experience. Yeah, Setswana, my experience. Yeah, as a Mutomunto, my experience of Western, everything. And then Achebe said to him, okay, when you do that, does Setswana benefit or does English benefit?
Damn.
Simple question. It's a simple question with a very, very simple answer. Just that scholars are too philosophical about simple concepts. Which one, if I'm Tswana and I'm reading this book by a Tswana man relating my Tswana reality, my mind is reading that in Setswana. I may be reading English, but I'm hearing Setswana.
Yeah.
Do you understand? Like right now, diteta na isiXhosa and ndilentonga ndikotuka na uphuma kwam apa. Are you hearing me in isiXhosa? Are you hearing me in English or in a language that you can understand?
I'm hearing the essence of you in Sesotho. Can I say why? Because
Because
you know we don't give ourselves enough credit because we are a multilingual society, but we only understand multilingualism or we only acknowledge multilingualism at the highest level of proficiency in a language. Right. But most of us, when I was still I did a baby show for many, many years, so I spoke to lots of ECD development, early child development specialists, language development specialists. Black children tend to speak later, especially this generation of kids, because they're exposed to multiple languages. So Papa was Xhosa, Mama was Sesotho, I'm at crash in English, TV speaking English. So the kid is distilling all this stuff. You find they speak later than white children or children who are exposed to one language at the home.
That's true.
But when the child speaks, the child is fluent in both and in all of the language that they are exposed to. I saw with my children, the thing that killed them being able to respond ka Sesotho was school. But their understanding of Sesotho is there. I think that language exists in multiple forms. And I think that the youth of today, what is really extraordinary about them, but also what is a part of their lineage, because so many young people in South Africa have done this, is they're finding a cultural language. They're finding language through dance, language through music, language through technology. It might not be verbal language, but it is a language. It is a mode of expression, and it's resonating with the world. People all over the world are making amapiano. People all over the world are dancing to these dances that are being made by young Black people.
I've got 3 children. They speak English. They speak English. Now, am I going to say to my children, no, don't speak English? Tetanis course. Their teachers at school speak English.
That's it.
Their friends speak English. TV speaks English.
Their phones.
What must I do as a parent now? I must find a way to teach the concepts zesiXhosa in a language that they can understand. Because what is the tradition yamaXhosa? Is it speaking it? Or is it the practice of it? Because baninzi abathetha isiXhosa, they speak it fluently, but babuya entabeni ngehelicopter mabenza imigidi. Bahlale iteji ngathi imishado, akusahlalwe ekhukhwini esibayeni. And then what is the meaning of umntana omgquba?
Should this episode have focused on the preservation of language, the evolution of language, or what you spoke about, the universalness of intelligence, the understanding?
That's where we must start. I'm of the notion that if we can remove narratives, remove lines and borders and all these narratives, no Black people this, no white people, no old Africans, no New Europe, no, remove that. Let's see each other through human eyes and start to speak to each other as humans. You'll find that we are all solving the same problems. All of us.
First, let's learn to parent, not raise our children. Because children that have been raised they begin to present with psychosomatic disorder and psychological disorders. Here's the deal. If Lebo can be able to meet your child's need from here up to the moment, it will work to improve his attachment to you. Not avoidant, not anxious. So as the child grows, he knows that the needs are met. But if you don't meet your child's needs, he will withdraw and emotionally anthropophize, which then he will start looking for substitute needs. When a child loses the needs from the parent and begin to opt for substitute needs, she loses her language. She can't express herself. She becomes an emotional dwarf. Then the child will begin to look for more aggressive things to substitute what the mother or the father did not give. Craving for sex, craving for drama, craving for everything substances, you know that.
Stimulation.
It all broke down at the neonatal stage.
Even technological stimulation, permanent.
Exactly.
Like,
When she's too preoccupied, for instance, we don't have teenagers anymore. We have got screenagers.
Yeah.
So that is why then the language is broken. Yet they need to learn the language intelligence. That's how I want to sign off.
Tumza?
Yo, peace.
Peace, a lot was said, a lot was said.
I'll leave it no Siswami Lebo to wrap it up. I mean, I'm just grateful that we touched on our greatness that we're actually not even acknowledging or even bigging ourselves up for. The fact that we are able to learn all these different languages. And we're one of the fewest countries, if not, I don't know. I know Nigeria has got multiple languages. That has got so many languages. And you find just 5 of us here, we speak multiple of those languages. And as you're saying, the highest form is the understanding, the speaking, the reading, the writing.
Now
to be able to do that in multiple languages, for me, I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's not be too hard on ourselves as South Africans, as Africans.
Exactly.
But also I think in terms of parenting, let us not only just raise our kids, but let's parent our kids.
Yeah. In terms of how this conversation has unfolded, I think you rightly said from the beginning, language is such a contentious issue. And anywhere you go in the world where you find people who have been colonized, language is going to be a contentious issue. It's going to be something that invokes pain and a sense of anxiety, trauma, PTSD, because it's linked to power, you know? But what I love about this conversation is that from the very beginning, it went to a place of authentic power. It started with language being a human tool to serve a spiritual function. And if we are going to be successful in undoing the trauma of apartheid, which was about putting people in silos and boxes and keeping us stuck there, then there is an authentic power that we have to reclaim. And language is a tool to help us do that. I believe that. I believe that if you strip the whole world away, you'll see words and you'll see how people felt and you'll see what happened to them and how they felt about it. I think writing, being a creature, not even writing, but being a creature that molds words is eternal. I know in my heart that the things that I say, even if the words don't live, but the way the words made people feel, the ripple effect of that is going to live forever. And that's probably the most important thing that I'll do. Apart from my work, but it's probably the most important thing that I'll do in terms of my kids.
Amen.
I want to thank you guys. You are amazing. And whoever got us all together here, you guys are incredible. I'm honored to be amongst these people that are here. And I'm very humbled ukuthi ngihlangane nani namhlanje nokuthi sihleli sisonke. Laba ngikhule nabo, and I'm just grateful ukuthi uNkulunkulu usibusisile ukuthi size sibe sikhule sibe bangaka sibe abazali and we're still alive. I love you guys.
Salute.
And if singatshelani often, I love you very much. Ngiyabonga kakhulu ngokuhlangana nani.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for breaking out of your shell and sharing your knowledge on podcasts. Your messages are heard daily on our phones, and please don't stop that.
Facts.
Ngiyabonga kakhulu, Baba Omdala.
Thank you.
Facts.
uNkulunkulu anibusiseni. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Let us keep learning. Let us keep sharing. And do we preserve our languages? Do we embrace the evolution? That's totally up to you. For us, I'd say it is food for thought. You do the dishes. Danko.
I think looking like this, speaking like this, is what allowed me to get a foot in the door.
How colonized must your mind be?
I can't fight this if I know that I am that guy.
Nah. Yeah. But I'm not gonna deny the pretty privilege that I have.
Little did you know.
Black Conversations is sponsored by Castle Milk Stout. Savor Black. Savor Castle Milk Stout.